Meet the human soldier. In a distant future, on a planet called Zephyria, a war raged between humans and aliens. The sky was often filled with the sounds of ships and the echoes of battles. It was a harsh world where survival was a daily struggle. Among the soldiers fighting for humanity was a brave young man named Jake. Jake was not like other soldiers. He was known for his courage and quick thinking. He stood tall with short, dark hair and sharp blue eyes that could see danger before it came. He had a strong build from years of training and fighting, but what set him apart was his heart. Jake cared deeply for those around him, always willing to help anyone in need. One day, Jake and his unit received a distress signal from a nearby settlement. The message was clear. They were under attack by a fierce alien group known as the Selfar. Without wasting time, Jake gathered his team, and they set out to rescue the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. As they approached the settlement, the sounds of screams and explosions filled the air. Smoke rose into the sky, and the sight was devastating. Jake's heart raced. He knew they had to act fast. The team quickly split into groups to cover more ground. Jake took a deep breath and charged towards the main building, where he heard the most noise. He kicked the door open and rushed inside. The sight before him was horrifying. A group of alien warriors was attacking a handful of terrified women and children. Without thinking twice, Jake jumped into the fray. His training kicked in as he fought off the attackers with skill and bravery. He moved like lightning, dodging their strikes and countering with powerful blows. One by one, he took them down, showing no fear. The alien warriors were taken by surprise, and soon they began to retreat. As the dust settled, Jake turned to the frightened group he had saved. Among them were 3 alien girls, their eyes wide with shock and admiration. They had never seen a human fight like this. One girl with bright green skin and long silver hair stepped forward. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You saved our lives." Jake smiled, a bit embarrassed. "I just did what anyone would do," he replied, trying to brush off the attention. But deep down, he felt a warmth spreading in his chest. These girls were not just victims. They were brave in their own right, and he admired their strength. As he helped them out of the building, Jake noticed the way the girls looked at him. Their eyes sparkled with a mixture of gratitude and something else: admiration, affection. He shook his head, trying to focus on the mission. He had a job to do, and he couldn't let himself get distracted. After ensuring the girls were safe, Jake led them to the evacuation point where his unit was waiting. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. As they prepared to leave, the girls surrounded him, their expressions filled with awe. Jake realized that saving them had not just changed their lives, it had changed his own as well. Little did he know, this act of bravery would spark a chain of events that would lead to unexpected friendships, rivalries, and perhaps even love. The journey ahead was going to be filled with challenges, but for now, Jake was just glad he had made a difference. He was ready to face whatever came next, not just as a soldier, but as a protector. The alien girl's reaction. As Jake led the rescued girls away from the chaos of the settlement, a strange feeling filled the air. The girls walked closely behind him, their eyes wide with a mix of admiration and confusion. They had never seen a human fight before, let alone save them from danger. Each girl had her own thoughts, and together, they shared a bond that was about to grow stronger. The girl with green skin and silver hair, named Lyra, was the first to break the silence. "You were amazing," she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. "I've never seen anyone fight like that before. You moved so fast." Her eyes sparkled as she spoke, clearly impressed by Jake's bravery. Jake turned to her, a shy smile spreading across his face. "Thanks, but I just did what I had to do," he replied humbly. He felt a rush of warmth at her praise, but he quickly reminded himself that he was just doing his job. Beside Lyra stood Zara, a girl with bright blue skin and striking orange eyes. She watched Jake with a mix of curiosity and admiration. "Do you always fight like that?" Zara asked, tilting her head slightly. "You're so strong. How did you learn to do that?" Jake shrugged, feeling slightly embarrassed. "Years of training," he said, "and a lot of practice." The attention from the girls made him feel a little uncomfortable. He was used to being just another soldier, not a hero. Then there was Mira, the quietest of the three. With soft lavender skin and gentle eyes, she hadn't spoken much since they escaped. But now she stepped forward. "You saved us. Why did you come to help?" Her voice was soft, but filled with genuine curiosity. Jake paused, considering her question. "Because it was the right thing to do," he replied. "No one should have to go through what you just did. I couldn't just stand by and watch." The girls exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from admiration to something deeper. They had always been told that humans were their enemies, but here was a soldier who risked his life to save them. This changed everything they thought they knew. As they continued to walk, Lyra couldn't help but feel drawn to Jake. She admired his bravery, but also sensed a kindness in him that she had never seen before. Zara felt the same way, and the two girls began to whisper to each other, their eyes occasionally darting back to the soldier ahead of them. "Do you think he could be our friend?" Lyra asked quietly, excitement bubbling in her voice. Zara nodded eagerly. "He's different. He cares about us. Not many would do what he did." Meanwhile, Jake, oblivious to the girls' growing feelings, focused on their safety. He led them to the evacuation point, where his fellow soldiers waited. As they reached the safety of the camp, Jake turned to the girls. "You're safe now. We'll get you to a secure place." But the girls had other thoughts. They looked at each other, a new determination in their eyes. They wanted to show Jake their gratitude in a way that went beyond words. The rescue had forged an unexpected connection, and they didn't want to lose it. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the camp, Jake noticed the girls lingering near him. They were smiling, and he felt a strange warmth in his heart. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a friendship that would change their lives forever. The bond between them was forming, filled with hope, admiration, and a spark of something more. Growing tension. As days passed at the military camp, the bond between Jake and the alien girls grew stronger. They shared meals, exchanged stories, and learned about each other's cultures. Jake felt like he was part of something special, but he also noticed a growing tension among the girls. It started to feel different, as if their friendship was shifting into something more complicated. Lyra, Zara, and Mira each admired Jake in their own way, but their feelings were not the same. Lyra was bold and expressive. She often laughed and flirted with Jake, making him blush. Zara was quieter, but her eyes sparkled whenever Jake was around. Mira was more reserved, watching from a distance, but her gaze was filled with longing. One evening, the camp was buzzing with energy as soldiers prepared for a night training exercise. Jake was in high spirits, chatting with the girls near the fire. He could feel their excitement, but he noticed something else lurking beneath the surface. When Lyra playfully nudged Jake, Zora's expression darkened slightly. Jake sensed the change in the atmosphere, but he didn't understand why. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the soldiers gathered for their training. Jake was assigned to lead a group, and the alien girls watched from the sidelines. They cheered him on, their voices full of support. But as Jake trained, he could see the girls exchanging glances, their smiles fading as the night wore on. After the training, they all sat together around the fire, and the mood was tense. Lyra, who usually joked and laughed, was quiet. Zara was fidgeting with her hands, and Mira kept her eyes on the ground. Jake tried to lighten the mood. "Did I impress you with my moves?" he joked, grinning. Lyra forced a laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. You were incredible," she said, but there was an edge to her voice. Zara looked at Lyra. then at Jake, her expression shifting from admiration to something else, jealousy. "Do you think we could join your training next time?" Zara asked suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. "It might be fun." Jake smiled, happy at the thought of including them. "Sure, I think you'd all do great. I could teach you some moves." He was unaware of the unspoken competition brewing between the girls. Mira finally spoke up, her voice soft but firm. "We're not warriors like you, Jake. We don't want to get in your way." The way she said it made Jake feel uneasy. "Why would you think that?" Jake asked, concerned. "You can be strong in your own way. I'd love to have you train with me." But the tension lingered in the air. Lyra crossed her arms, her eyes narrowed slightly. "Why do you want us to train with you?" she challenged. "Is it just because you want to show off?" Jake was taken aback by her sudden hostility. "No, that's not it at all. I just want us to be closer, to work together." The girls exchanged glances, and Jake could feel the unspoken emotions swirling around them. It was clear that something deeper was brewing, but he couldn't understand what. Zara, feeling the weight of the moment, finally stood up. "Maybe we should take a break," she suggested, her voice shaky. "We need some time to think." As the girls walked away, Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. He watched them go, confusion written across his face. What had just happened? He had wanted to grow closer, but instead, he felt like he was losing them. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Jake knew that the tension between the girls was growing, and it was something he had to understand before it was too late. The soldiers' confusion. Jake sat alone by the fire, staring into the flames as they danced and crackled. The laughter and chatter from the other soldiers faded into the background. His mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, tangled and chaotic. The earlier tension with the alien girls weighed heavily on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had said or done something wrong. What had happened? Just days ago, they were laughing together, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. But now it felt as if a wall had suddenly risen between him and the girls. Jake replayed the evening's events over and over in his mind, trying to find the moment when things had shifted. Was it his joking tone? Had he misread their interest in him? He recalled how Lyra had reacted, her playful attitude turning cold in an instant. Zara's question about training had seemed innocent enough, but now he wondered if it had been a challenge, an unspoken competition for his attention. Mira's gentle nature contrasted sharply with the tension brewing among her friends. He could feel her pain, but it left him confused. He had never intended to hurt anyone, least of all the girls he had come to care for. Signing, Jake stood up and decided he needed to talk to them. Perhaps clearing the air could help restore the friendship they had built. He walked toward the girls' tent, his heart racing with uncertainty. Would they want to talk, or would they shut him out? As he approached, he saw Lyra and Zara sitting together, their expressions serious. Mira was a few steps away, looking up at the stars, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Jake hesitated, unsure of how to start. "Hey, can I join you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked up, her green skin glowing softly in the moonlight. For a moment, there was silence. Then she nodded slowly. "Sure," she said, her tone cooler than he remembered. Zara shifted her gaze toward him, but didn't say anything. Jake sat down, feeling the weight of their silence. "I wanted to talk about earlier," he began, his voice firm but gentle. "I didn't mean to upset you. I just thought it would be fun to train together." Lyra crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "Fun, or a way to show us how strong you are." Jake felt his chest tighten. "It's not about showing off. I care about you all. I want us to be a team." He could see the flicker of doubt in Lyra's eyes, and the pain behind Zora's stern expression. "Maybe you see us as friends, but it feels different for us," Zora said quietly. "We are starting to feel something more, and it's confusing." Mira turned to them, her eyes bright with unched emotions. "We didn't expect to develop feelings for you, Jake. This isn't easy for us." Jake's heart raced at their honesty. "I didn't expect it either," he admitted. "I just wanted to help, and I care about you. But I didn't know it would change things." Lyra uncrossed her arms, her expression softening. "We're not sure how to handle these feelings. We've been taught to fear humans. But you're different. We admire you, and it's scary." The words hung in the air, and Jake felt a mix of relief and confusion. "I don't want you to be scared. I want us to be honest with each other. I don't want to lose our friendship." Zora looked at him, her orange eyes shimmering. "We don't want to lose it either, but we also don't want to hurt each other." Mira stepped closer, her gentle presence calming the tension. "Maybe we need to take our time. Let things develop naturally, without pressure." Jake nodded, grateful for their understanding. "That sounds fair. I'm here for you, no matter what. We can figure this out together." As they talked, the weight of confusion slowly began to lift. Although the road ahead was uncertain, Jake felt a glimmer of hope. Their friendship might be complicated, but it was also strong. They could face the challenges together, and that thought filled him with warmth. The first challenge. The next morning, a sense of urgency filled the military camp. Reports came in that a new threat had emerged. A larger group of Selfar warriors was advancing toward their location. The soldiers were on high alert, and Jake felt the familiar rush of adrenaline in his veins. This was their first real challenge since the girls had joined the camp, and he wanted to prove that they could work together as a team. As the soldiers gathered for a briefing, Jake noticed the alien girls standing to the side. Lyra, Zora, and Mira watched him with a mix of anxiety and determination in their eyes. They had decided to join the fight, wanting to support Jake and his fellow soldiers. Their bravery inspired him, but he also worried for their safety. "Listen up, everyone," Commander Hayes shouted, drawing everyone's attention. "We're facing a large force of Selfar today. They're more organized than we've seen before, and they will not hesitate to attack. We need to hold our ground and protect the camp at all costs." Jake felt a rush of determination. He turned to the girls who were listening intently. "We'll stick together during the fight," he said, trying to reassure them. "Just remember what we practiced. You've got this." The girls nodded, but Jake could see the fear in their eyes. He knew they were nervous, but also excited. This was their chance to prove themselves. As the enemy approached, the soldiers took their positions, ready to defend the camp. The sound of alien ships echoed in the sky, and Jake felt his heart race. He positioned himself near the front lines, and the girls stood close behind him, their faces set with determination. When the first wave of Selfar warriors charged forward, chaos erupted. Jake fought fiercely, his training kicking in as he battled the attackers. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, not just for his fellow soldiers, but also for the alien girls behind him. In the heat of the battle, Jake lost sight of the girls for a moment. Panic surged through him. He turned to search for them, his heart pounding. "Lyra, Zara, Mira," he shouted, trying to locate them amidst the chaos. Suddenly, he spotted Lyra fighting bravely against a Selfar warrior. She was holding her ground, using the skills Jake had taught her. Jake felt a swell of pride as he watched her, but his joy quickly turned to fear when he saw another enemy rushing toward her from behind. "Lyra, watch out," he shouted, pushing through the crowd to reach her. Just as the enemy warrior lunged at her, Jake jumped in the way, taking the hit instead. He felt a sharp pain in his side as he deflected the attack, but he managed to knock the warrior down. "Are you okay?" Lyra asked, breathless and wide-eyed. Jake nodded, but he could feel the blood seeping through his uniform. "Stay close to me," he urged, keeping his eyes on the fight. Meanwhile, Zara and Mira fought side by side, using their agility to dodge attacks. They had come a long way since their first day, but the fear still flickered in their eyes. "We can do this," Zara shouted, encouraging Mira. They worked together, taking down enemies as a team. their movements synchronized. But the battle was far from over. The HFY continued to push forward, their numbers overwhelming. Just as Jake was about to regroup with the girls, he heard a deafening roar. A massive HFY beast, larger than any they had seen, emerged from the smoke. "Everyone, fall back," Commander Hayes ordered, but it was too late. The creature charged toward Jake and the girls, its eyes glowing with rage. Jake's heart raced. This was their first real challenge, and it was testing not only their strength, but also their resolve. "We need to fight together," he yelled, rallying the girls and his fellow soldiers. With determination in their hearts, they prepared to face the creature as a team. The bond they had formed was about to be put to the ultimate test. Jake knew that if they could work together, they had a chance to overcome this challenge. Betrayal and trust. The battle against the massive HFY beast was fierce. Jake and the soldiers fought bravely, but the creature was powerful and relentless. It charged at them with ferocious roars, its sharp teeth bared, and its eyes glowing with fury. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline as he led his team, but he was also keenly aware of the girls behind him, their safety weighing heavily on his mind. Amid the chaos, Jake caught sight of Lyra, Zara, and Mira working together to fend off smaller enemies. They were fighting valiantly, but Jake could see the exhaustion on their faces. He admired their bravery, but deep down, he felt a growing concern. The HFY warriors were closing in, and he knew they had to come up with a plan to defeat the beast quickly. Suddenly, Jake heard a shout. "Look out!" a soldier yelled, pointing toward the left flank. A group of HFY warriors had broken through, charging toward the girls. Jake's heart raced. He sprinted toward them, desperate to protect his friends. "Stay together," he shouted, his voice rising above the noise of the battle. But just as he reached the girls, he felt a sharp pain in his side again. He glanced down and saw that he had been hit by a stray blast. Gritting his teeth, he pushed through the pain, but it was clear they were running out of time. As they fought off the attackers, Jake noticed something strange. Zara seemed distracted, glancing around nervously as if she were waiting for something to happen. He couldn't figure out what was wrong, but he didn't have time to ask. In the midst of the chaos, Mira suddenly gasped. "Look!" she shouted, pointing toward the edge of the battlefield. Jake turned to see a figure standing apart from the fighting. It was one of the soldiers from their camp, someone Jake recognized. The soldier was observing the battle, but instead of joining the fight, he seemed to be signaling to the HFY warriors. Jake's stomach dropped. "No, it can't be," he whispered, disbelief washing over him. "He's a traitor." "Who?" Lyra asked, confused. "That soldier," Jake shouted, pointing. "He's helping the HFY." Before he could act, the soldier turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows. Jake felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could someone turn against their own people? "Jake, we need to focus on the beast," Zora urged, pulling him back. But the sight of the traitor had shaken him. He felt a deep sense of distrust creeping into the camp. If they couldn't trust their own soldiers, how could they trust anyone? "Stay close," Jake shouted to the girls, but he could see their fear reflected in their eyes. The betrayal cut deeper than just the soldiers' actions. It threatened the fragile trust they had built together. As the battle raged on, Jake found it harder to concentrate. He glanced at the girls, who were fighting fiercely but seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. "We have to stay united," he urged, hoping to reassure them. But Zora looked conflicted. "What if more people are against us? How do we know who to trust?" Mira stepped forward, her voice steady. "We can trust each other. We've fought together and saved each other's lives. That matters more than anything." Jake nodded, grateful for Mira's words. "We've faced danger before. We can do it again. Let's keep fighting and protect one another." With renewed determination, they faced the beast once more. The bond they had formed was now more important than ever. They had to trust each other, even in the face of betrayal. As the battle continued, Jake felt a sense of resolve wash over him. He knew they could overcome this challenge together. With trust in their hearts, they would fight not just for survival, but for the friendship they had forged. And as long as they stood united, they could face any danger that came their way. The climax. The battle reached its peak as Jake and the alien girls faced the massive Selfar beast. The creature roared, shaking the ground beneath them, and its glowing eyes seemed to search for weaknesses in their defense. Jake's heart raced as he looked at the girls. He could see the determination in their eyes, but fear lingered beneath the surface. "Remember what we practiced," Jake shouted, trying to rally his team. "Stay together and focus on teamwork. We can defeat this thing." Lyra nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. "Let's show it what we're made of." Zara and Mira shared a look of solidarity. They were ready to fight, united by their shared purpose and the bond they had formed. With a fierce battle cry, the beast lunged at them, its massive jaws snapping just inches from Jake. He ducked, narrowly avoiding its teeth, and turned to strike at its flank. But the creature was quick, swinging its tail like a battering ram. It knocked Jake off his feet, sending him crashing to the ground. "Jake!" Lyra cried out, fear flashing in her eyes. Without hesitation, she charged forward, leaping onto the beast's back. "Hold on, Jake. We can do this together." Zara and Mira followed, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. As they joined Lyra, they began to coordinate their attacks, striking at the creature's vulnerable spots. Mira targeted the beast's eyes, using her agility to dodge its massive claws. Zara aimed for its legs, trying to bring it down. But the creature was relentless. It bucked and twisted, trying to throw Lyra off. Jake, determined to help, sprang to his feet despite the pain still throbbing in his side. "Lyra, hold on," he shouted. With a fierce grip, Lyra clung to the beast's fur. "I won't let go," she shouted back, her voice full of grit. The creature howled in frustration, its movements becoming more frantic. Jake dashed toward the beast, his heart pounding. He knew they had to act fast. The longer they fought, the more exhausted they became. As he approached, he spotted a weak spot on the creature's neck. If they could land a hit there, it might bring the beast down for good. "Zara, Mira, aim for its neck," Jake yelled. "That's our chance." The girls nodded, understanding the plan. They focused their attacks, aiming for the vulnerable area. Lyra shifted her weight, using all her strength to keep the creature distracted. As it turned its massive head, Jake seized the moment. He lunged forward, his weapon raised high. With a powerful thrust, he struck the beast's neck. The creature let out a deafening roar, a mix of pain and fury, and its body shuddered violently. For a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. "Now, hit it again," Jake yelled, urgency in his voice. With a final, united effort, Lyra, Zara, and Mira joined him. They struck together, their weapons finding their mark. The beast stumbled, its legs buckling beneath it. Jake could hardly believe it. They were actually defeating it. But just as victory seemed near, the creature lashed out one last time. It swung its tail, aiming straight for the girls. Jake's heart dropped as he realized the danger. "Get down," he shouted, throwing himself in front of them. The tail struck hard, knocking Jake to the ground. Pain coursed through him, but he managed to shield the girls with his body. The force of the blow sent him sprawling, but he was determined to protect them. "Jake!" Mira screamed, panic flooding her voice. As the dust settled, Jake pushed himself up, shaking off the pain. He looked at the girls who were unharmed but shaken. "I'm okay," he said, forcing a smile. "We can't give up now." With one final effort, they regrouped and launched their last attack. Fueled by their trust in one another and their growing bond, they struck the beast one last time. It let out a final, ear-piercing roar before collapsing to the ground, defeated. Breathing heavily, Jake and the girls stood over the fallen creature. The battlefield was silent except for their heavy breathing. They had done it. Together, they had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious. In that moment, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of pride and relief. They had proven themselves, not just as soldiers but as friends. The bond between them had grown stronger, and he knew that together, they could face anything that lay ahead. After the fight, the battlefield lay quiet after the fierce struggle. The massive HFY beast was finally defeated, its enormous body sprawled on the ground. Jake, Lyra, Zara, and Mira stood together, their hearts racing from the adrenaline of battle. They were exhausted, bruised, and battered, but the victory felt sweet. They had faced their greatest challenge yet and come out stronger. As the dust settled, the soldiers began to regroup. Commander Hayes walked over, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You all fought bravely," he said, looking at Jake and the girls. "I never expected you to face that beast and defeat it. You truly proved yourselves today." Jake smiled, but his mind was still racing. He glanced at the girls, who were catching their breath. Lyra was grinning, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Did you see how we took it down? We did it together," she exclaimed, her voice filled with enthusiasm. Zara nodded, but her expression was more serious. "It was dangerous, though. We can't forget how close we came to losing everything." Her voice held a hint of worry, and Jake could see that the battle had affected her deeply. Mira, always the gentle voice of reason, added, "But we didn't lose. We stood together, and that made all the difference. We have to remember that." Jake felt a swell of pride at their words. They had fought not just as soldiers but as a team, a family. "You're right," he said. "We need to stick together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a team." As the soldiers began to clean up the battlefield, Jake noticed the mood shifting. The initial excitement of victory was fading, replaced by a somber realization of the losses they had faced. The camp had sustained injuries, and some soldiers were mourning fallen comrades. Jake felt a heaviness in his chest. He remembered the soldier who had betrayed them, the one who had helped the HFY. The thought of betrayal stung even more now. He knew they had won the battle, but there was still a war to fight, one not just against the HFY, but also against fear and mistrust among their own. As evening fell, the camp gathered for a meeting. Commander Hayes stood before them, a serious look on his face. "Today, we faced a great danger, and we emerged victorious. But we cannot forget the cost. We must remain vigilant. We have learned that trust is fragile, and we cannot allow betrayal to weaken our unity." The soldiers nodded, their expressions solemn. Jake felt a sense of camaraderie in the air, a shared understanding of the challenges ahead. They would have to work harder to build trust, not just among themselves, but also with the alien girls who had fought alongside them. After the meeting, Jake found himself walking away from the crowd, lost in thought. He felt a light touch on his arm and turned to see Lyra standing beside him. Her expression was softer now, the excitement of battle replaced by concern. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Jake sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm just thinking about everything. We won, but it feels like we still have a long way to go." Lyra nodded, her eyes searching his. "We'll get through this. We're stronger together, remember. No matter what happens, we'll support each other." Zara and Mira joined them, and together they formed a small circle. "We're a team," Zara said firmly. "We can face anything if we stick together." Mira smiled, her gentle nature shining through. "And we'll learn from this. Trust takes time, but we can build it back up. We're here for each other." Jake looked at each of them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you for being by my side," he said sincerely. "I couldn't have done this without you. Together, we can face any challenge that comes our way." As night fell, they sat around a small fire, sharing stories and laughter. The bond they had forged was stronger than ever, And despite the challenges ahead, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope. They had fought for their survival, and now they would fight for each other, united in purpose and friendship. In the darkness, they found light in their connection, ready to face whatever came next. A new beginning. The days following the battle were filled with change. The camp was slowly recovering, but the atmosphere was different. There was a sense of unity among the soldiers, but also a cautiousness that lingered in the air. Jake, Lyra, Zara, and Mira had become the heart of this change. They had proven that they could work together, bridging the gap between humans and aliens. As they walked through the camp one sunny morning, Jake noticed how the soldiers greeted the girls with respect and warmth. It made him smile. They were no longer seen just as aliens. They were now valued allies and friends. The bond they had forged during the battle had shifted perceptions, and Jake felt proud of what they had achieved together. "Look at that," he said, pointing to a group of soldiers sharing a meal with Lyra, Zara, and Mira. "They're really starting to see you as one of us." Lyra grinned, her eyes shining with joy. "I can't believe how far we've come. Just a few weeks ago, I never would have imagined this." Mira nodded, her smile soft and warm. "It feels good to be accepted. We fought hard for this, and it's nice to see it paying off." Zora looked thoughtful. "But we can't forget that trust takes time. We need to keep proving ourselves to them and to each other." Jake agreed, feeling a sense of responsibility for the future. "You're right. We've made progress, but we need to keep moving forward. We can't let anything break this bond we formed." As the days went by, Jake and the girls became more involved in camp activities. They helped with training sessions, sharing their combat skills with the soldiers. Jake found joy in teaching Lyra, Zara, and Mira, watching them grow stronger and more confident with each passing day. Their laughter filled the air, turning hard training into moments of lighthearted fun. One afternoon, as they practiced combat techniques, Zara caught Jake's eye. "What's next for us, Jake?" she asked, her brow furrowed with thought. "Do we stay here and continue to fight, or do we look for a new path?" Jake paused, considering her words. "I think we need to be ready for anything. The Xelfar threat isn't over, but we also have a chance to explore new possibilities. Maybe we could work together to find a way to negotiate peace." Lyra's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "A peace treaty. That could change everything. We could find a way to end this conflict." Mira added, "But it will take courage. We will need to show the other side that we want peace, not just war." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of their mission. "If we're going to do this, we need to stand united. Together, we can show both sides that there's a better way." As they discussed their ideas, a sense of excitement filled the air. They could feel the spark of a new beginning, a chance to forge a path toward peace and understanding. The battle had shown them that they could overcome great challenges, and now they could use that strength to create a brighter future. In the following days, they began to plan their approach. They gathered information about the Xelfar, learning about their culture and customs. Jake and the girls wanted to understand their enemies better, to find common ground that could lead to peaceful negotiations. As they prepared for this new mission, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope. The bond between him and the girls had become unbreakable, and together they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a future where humans and aliens could coexist peacefully. On a beautiful morning, as the sun rose over the camp, Jake looked at Lyra, Zara, and Mira. "This is just the beginning," he said, his heart full of determination. "Together, we can change the world." With their hearts set on a new purpose, they stepped into the day, ready to face the future hand in hand. The journey ahead would be difficult, but with trust, courage, and friendship, they were ready to embrace it all.